Okay. And we're live on Facebook. Candace.
Great. Well, hello, everyone. So nice to see you today. Thank you for joining. My name is Candace Karistan, and it is my honor to serve Democrats Abroad as its international chair. As I mentioned, some of you might be joining us for the first time. Thank you for joining us. And for those of you coming back, a big warm welcome and thank you to you as well. A little bit about Democrats Abroad. We are the largest organization of U.S. citizens living outside of the United States. And we are also an official arm of the Democratic Party. So you might be asking, what does Democrats Abroad do? What's our mission? At the end of our day, it is our goal to provide Americans abroad like you a voice in our government and to elect Democratic candidates by mobilizing the overseas vote. So a little bit about myself. I'm based in Munich, Germany. I'm a Pennsylvanian. So thank you for letting me join the Texas event. But I just wanted to say a little bit about Democrats Abroad's work. And I really cannot understate or overstate rather what this has meant for states all around the country, and most importantly for our democracy. So in Pennsylvania in 2016, Democrats did not win it. Democrats lost the presidency by 77,000 votes, split through Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. That's 77,000 votes. In 2020, however, we turned this around, in no small part thanks to overseas voters like you showing up like never before. The votes from abroad were the margin of victory in the tightest of races, including for President Biden in both Arizona and Georgia. If overseas voters had not shown up, and I don't say this lightly, we would have been looking at a very different outcome for American democracy, an outcome that would have rewarded hate and authoritarianism. Now, I'm here today to thank all of you for showing up in 2020, but I'm also here to say that we really need to approach 2022 as if it were a presidential election year. And I think the news from the Supreme Court this past week has made that very clear. There is too much at stake, and I'm here to say if you have not done so already, please go to voteforabroad.org right now and request your ballot. At present, there are over 90,000 Texans registered as overseas voters. We need to not only make sure that these voters show up, but that we grow that base. And at the end of the day, that we can get phenomenal candidates like Beto O'Rourke elected. So I'm here with another ask, and that is, who else do you know? Who else can you help vote from abroad? Who else can you help vote within the United States? Who can you share today's recording with? When we all do this, we are going to grow that base. So a few more quick words about Democrats Abroad and our approach to this midterm cycle. We're really trying to bring the elections and the issues closer to you so that you know who and what is on the ballot, and so that lawmakers stateside know about the issues unique to us as overseas voters. We've also really tried to hone in on must-win races like the Texas governorship. We've been phone banking battleground states all this spring. In fact, Texas was our first state, and this will continue throughout the summer and fall. So please do come on board with us if you're able. We've also launched battleground state teams. These are really to build community around that hometown pride, and it is great to see so many Texans on today's call. These volunteer teams provide specific support, particularly with areas of voter assistance and voter protection, to make sure that you can cast your ballot this November. In this vein, I'd like to thank our Texas state team for organizing today's Meet the Candidate event with Beto, and of course to you, our attendees, for taking time out of your Saturday to help our democracy. With that, I'll pass it to Jennifer von Esdorf, our lead for the Texas state team. Jennifer?
Thanks so much, Candace. We are so excited about today's event and hearing from Beto. I'm Jennifer von Esdorf, the Democrats Abroad Global State Teams Coordinator and one of the Texans Abroad team leads. I was born and raised in Abilene, Texas, and had lived in Germany for the last 20 years. And it has been my great pleasure to be a part of the team, helping to establish our state-focused outreach and our efforts to assist and encourage Texans living overseas to cast their votes up and down the ballot. In fact, we already increased the numbers of ballots returned to Texas by 50%, up to 60,000 in 2020 compared to only 40,000 in 2016. We even have close to 90,000 overseas voters registered in Texas, which shows us just how key the work is to ensure that Texans living outside the United States can make their voices heard. We'd love for you to join us next Saturday, May 14th, for our next Texans Abroad planning meeting to find out how you can get involved in this crucial work. We are a 100% volunteer-run organization, and without others like yourself joining us in this cause, we can't get this done. So take the time and come out and join us next Saturday. Just a little information about voting in Texas from abroad. To ensure that you have all of the protections afforded by federal law, it's important that you use the federal postcard application not the in-state absentee ballot by mail. This can be done in just a few minutes at votefromabroad.org. We recommend printing your form, signing it in ink, and then emailing a picture to your county clerk's office. Please remember that this process needs to be repeated every calendar year. You can ask that your ballot be sent to you by email to avoid postal mail delays, but Texas overseas voters must return their ballots by postal mail. Your ballot will be sent out 45 days prior to each election, so it's best to get set to vote as soon as possible. Once you've received your ballot, get it in the mail ASAP so that it arrives on time to be counted. Postal mail delays are the @1 reason why ballots are rejected. We've put together detailed information and instructions about voting and returning your ballot. Please reach out if you have any questions to tx@democratsabroad.org. And now I'll hand over to one of our other founding members of Texans Abroad, Lisa Weedman. Lisa, take it away.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Candace. Thank you to the organizers of this event. And thank you to Mr. Beto O'Rourke for showing up for us today. Good morning, Democrats around the globe. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever you are. I know that y'all are some of the best people in the world. So my name is Lisa Weedman. I'm a Texan and a part-time Democrat abroad. And today I'm saying good morning from Austin, Texas. It's going to be a scorcher today. And one thing that makes me more irritable than being hot this early in May is wondering if our electrical grid here in Texas can hold up or if it's on the verge of collapse. Another thing that bothers me is knowing that electricity providers are not the only predators in our state. Our state legislature legalized bounty hunters last year, people who can receive a $10,000 reward for reporting anyone seeking or receiving abortion services, even across state lines. And let's not forget that the Texas legislature went after our mail ballots last year as well, making a cumbersome process even more difficult. These concerns and so many more are the kinds of worries that we have in a Republican-dominated state. There is no compassion in this brand of conservatism that will rip a child from their mother's arms and place them in sweltering detention camps. This is not hyperbole. This is really real. Let's not let Texas be a harbinger for the rest of our nation. That's why the work that Democrats Abroad does is so important. We have flown under the radar for years, but in 2016 and 2020, we flexed our political muscles. We organized, we mobilized, we educated voters, and in a global pandemic and with the US Postal Service being dismantled as well, we delivered. Our votes helped secure a Democratic president and a majority in both houses of Congress. Our votes helped elect 2 Democratic senators from the great southern state of Georgia. And I fervently believe that DA will once again help deliver Texas in November from this dystopian nightmare by helping to elect the first Democratic governor since Ann Richards, Mr. Beto O'Rourke. This organization, our organization, Democrats Abroad, is no longer a secret weapon. Our global phone banking organization is second to none. In the last election cycle, our phenomenal volunteers made hundreds of thousands of phone calls and contacts. Last year, our leadership launched a strategic state teams program starting with Texas and an initiative to upgrade our digital infrastructure, expanding our organizing capacity and reach. Our army of volunteers put in thousands and thousands of hours for us, for the kind of country and world we want to see. So my question to you is this: how much is our slim Democratic majority worth to you? When you wake up on November 9th, how much personal value are you going to place on the election results? Can you think of a monetary value that makes sense to you? In 2007, a candidate by the name of Mr. Barack Obama showed us what happens when people pool their resources in what has come to be known as crowdfunding. Today, I am asking you to join me in supporting the critical work of Democrats Abroad by contributing $20.22 to keep America blue in 22, to turn Texas blue in 22, using the donation link in the chat. Again, you decide how much this work is worth to you and what you are able to do. If you are in a position to make a major gift, please send a private message to the event organizer or contact us via the donation page. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for volunteering, and thank you for voting.
Lisa, thank you so much for your passionate words and for reminding us that we can't do this for free and that we need everyone out there to help pitch in. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce our first guest speaker. And we're going to be joined now by Kylie McNaught, Executive Director of the Harris County Democratic Party, to speak to us about what SB 8 and the dismantling of Roe v. Wade mean for women in Texas. Kylie is also a current board member of Clinic Access Support Network, a Houston-based abortion practical support fund, and a doctoral student at UT Houston Health, focusing on reproductive justice. Kylie, thank you so much for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thanks to everybody involved in this whole organization. It's so incredible to see so many people from all over the world who still care so much about, the mission of Roe v. Wade and keeping Texas blue, making Texas blue, keeping Harris County blue, and keeping the United States blue. We've seen in Texas for a long time now what a post Roe v. Wade world looks like. So I've had the experience of working both on the legislative side as Deputy Chief of Staff and Legislative Director for various Democratic state representatives, while simultaneously being a volunteer and board member for CASIN, our nickname for Clinic Access Support Network, and now on the electoral side with the Harris County Democratic Party. And in Harris County, we have a lot of power because we yield almost a quarter of all Texas votes. So turnout in Harris County and the other big counties like Travis, Bear, and whatever one Dallas is, sorry, Dallas guys, is really important to Texas because we can truly make Texas a blue state. And this is my pitch again for y'all's votes, because y'all's votes are very important to us. But I want to talk a little bit about what Texas has looked like since SB 8, because it is a marker for what so many states, I think 28 states in the US have trigger ban laws, Texas being one of them. And we already know what it's going to look like. Sorry, my cat's she hears me talking. And we already know what that looks like in Texas. So since September 1st of 2021, abortion in Texas has been effectively banned. The heartbeat bill was passed in one of our many special sessions last year, and we immediately saw the devastating aftermath. So Clinic Access Support Network, we historically have driven patients from their homes to their appointments and back again. We were always 100% volunteer run. So we would have volunteers that would go be trained to pick folks up, take them to the clinics in Houston. Houston, we have 4 clinics. One of them is the Houston Women's Clinic, which is the #1 abortion provider in the country. folks come there from Mexico, from Louisiana, from everywhere. They do thousands of abortions, or did thousands of abortions a week. I myself had gone to Houston Women's Clinic, and so we would do sometimes 50 rides a day from all over greater Houston area, Harris County. During COVID, we transitioned to providing funds for ride shares, and now post SB 8, we have had to go from 99% of our rides being within Harris County to 90% of the folks that we help get their abortions leaving Texas. And we now provide, we used to only do the greater Houston area. We now provide within 100 miles of Houston because, and sometimes even beyond, because it takes this really intricate, wide network of folks to make sure that people can still get their abortions. And so we not only provide the transportation funds, but we also have moved to providing childcare funds, hotels, booking flights, booking buses, booking ride shares to and from airports, providing food stipends. Pretty much, we're a practical support organization. So pretty much whatever support a person seeking abortion care needs, outside of directly funding the abortion, because there's other organizations that help with that. So every single person we see almost has to leave Texas now. Now, Roe v. Wade being overturned would be even more devastating because on average, we're seeing folks already traveling around 500 miles to go get their abortions. That's going to increase because we will no longer be able to go to Louisiana. In Louisiana, they're on the cusp of passing a bill that will make abortion a homicide charge. We won't be able to go to Louisiana. Oh, and they're also trying to outlaw IUDs there. So Oklahoma, we could maybe still do New Mexico, but from Houston, that's a very long drive. It's a 13-14 hour drive. So the access that people have is going to be less and less and less. And we all know that this isn't going to always affect wealthy white women. They're still going to have their ability most times to catch a flight to California, to catch a flight to DC or Colorado. However, we do know that 49% of people seeking abortions are living below the poverty line. 59% of people seeking abortions in the US already have children. And then 55% of them are seeking abortion because they have experienced some sort of life disruption. So they might have lost their job, they might have broken up with their partner, they might be houseless, they might be escaping some sort of intimate partner violence. Most folks getting an abortion are doing it because it's for an economic reason. They know that they cannot afford a baby. And then there's a group of people who just don't want to, and that should be their choice. And what we do know is those numbers are only going to increase. We also know that there's a 30 to 40% reduction in maternal mortality among Black women in states that have access to abortion. So abortion is not only an economic choice, it is oftentimes a life-saving choice for people. And so we're seeing these numbers increase. We're seeing our clients quadruple, and it's only just going to go down from here. And it's really devastating. And I thank you all for being here and hearing us out and supporting what we've gone through in Texas already, and knowing that by electing folks like Beto O'Rourke, like Mike Collier, and participating in statewide elections and state house seats and school board elections, that we can really work to turn things around, but we have to do it now, and we have to do it this year. So thank you all.
Thank you so much, Kylie. Kylie, can I ask a question? What do you think would be a good way for those of us who are living abroad to support the work that you're doing? And I mean, we really appreciate you talking to us, because it's almost unfathomable for those of us who live in countries where this would never happen. We have access to healthcare, we have access to abortions. And many women don't feel forced to make these decisions because we have childcare and maternal leave. And so what can we do from abroad to help support the work that you're doing there?
Yeah, there's so much you can do. You can always donate. You can donate to CASIN. We have a website, clinicaccess.org. You can always donate to your local Democratic Party, and you can still participate in voter outreach and democracy abroad. So there's always a lot of Democratic parties, and a lot of candidates have moved since COVID to doing on virtual phone banks. We have weekly virtual phone banks at the Harris County Democratic Party. So if you are a Houston or Harris County voter, shout out to you. And please, if it's at a time that's reasonable for you, you can always check out our website, harrisdemocrats.org, and sign up for one of our virtual events, because we have a ton of weekly and we'll move into bi-weekly and daily phone banks. And then relational organizing, telling your friends, getting when you meet somebody that you know is a US citizen and eligible to vote, encouraging them, helping them to vote, and then calling your friends and family back home and letting them know, like, hey, right now there's like 3 elections happening in Harris County, and letting them know, hey, are you registered to vote? Making sure that everybody who can vote does vote every single time.
Excellent. And I think that's so important for us to hear, because we all know someone living abroad. We can all reach out and just remind them, it's really easy to request your ballot. And we hope that you'll do the same and let everybody know that, call their cousin who lives in Belgium and let them know that they can vote in Texas still. And that's how we turn out the overseas vote. And we really thank you so much for coming, Kylie, and thank you for talking to us about all of this. And we look forward to working together with the Houston Democratic or the Harris County Democratic Party, and helping to find those overseas voters. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you soon. All right. Very close to the big moment. Beto will be joining us shortly. Before he does, let me just take a minute to recap how he has been working tirelessly on the ground in Texas. Beto served in Congress representing the El Paso area from 2013 to 2019. He caught the eye of the state and the nation when he went head-to-head with Senator Ted Cruz during the 2018 midterms, coming incredibly close to unseating Cruz. Part of Beto's strategy to mobilize Texas voters has always been to visit the entire state, all 254 counties, and speak to voters who often go overlooked. For those of you who aren't familiar with Texas road trips, that's a lot of hours and miles and trips to Whataburger. After 2018, Beto and his volunteers continued to fight for Texans. Powered by People has been a mobilizing force, even making phone calls during the disastrous power outages of 2021 to ensure that people were safe and taken care of. Beto stepped onto the national stage as a presidential candidate in 2020, and now all eyes are turned to Texas as he takes on Governor Greg Abbott, who is seeking his 3rd term. Abbott has been an avid Trump supporter, inviting him for publicity stunts along the Mexican border, in addition to gleefully signing the so-called heartbeat bill, which essentially banned abortions in Texas. He has been a pivotal figure in Texas's disastrous COVID response, with nearly 90,000 deaths. The grid collapse during the 2021 ice storm causing 300 known deaths and $200 billion in damages. And most recently, driving up inflation by delaying trucks carrying goods across the border in a flawed attempt to tarnish the image of the current administration. Texas deserves better. We need to show up this November to fire Greg Abbott and all of the other Republicans in statewide office. So as we wait for Beto to join us, he should just be here in a couple of minutes. I will remind you one more time, request your ballots for this election. This is not a year that we can sit out. We have to show up, and we need to vote in every single election, from our congressional offices all the way down to the school boards. And in Texas, if you choose on your form that you intend to return, you will get the full ballot. So we hope that you will join us this year. Request your ballot. We hope that you will join our volunteer efforts, because like I said before, we are a 100% volunteer run organization. And we want to make sure that we don't leave any vote on the table this year. So if you check the chat, Eileen has just posted some things in there. With any questions, you can write to tx@democratsabroad.org. Please have a look at our voting guide. It can be quite complex to get your ballots back, and we have laid out some very simple step-by-step instructions. Join our Facebook group. That's a great way to chat with other Texans who live abroad. And just show up and be present. And like Lisa said, your money and your dollars also help us to make sure that we can call our Texans, that we can write to our Texans, and that we can get out the overseas vote, because this is the year that we flip Texas blue. All right, just a little note, Beto is going to be joining us shortly. He's got 30 minutes for us. He's going to speak, and then we have some panelists who will be asking him questions. We're really excited to hear what he has to say. So we'll just give it a minute for Beto to come on.
Hey, Jennifer, okay. This is Cynthia. I am on Beto's team, and he is about to join in like 3 minutes. I'm sorry, he's just a little bit late. Just wanted to thank you all. Thank you for inviting us. We have a really big rally in Houston this morning, so trying to get ready for that. We have probably close to 4,000 people have RSVP'd. We are so excited about it, and it's a rally for women's rights. And you know, since the decision was made, we realized that we need to do something, and people are just devastated, very upset, very hurt about, you know, what's happening in Texas right now. So today could not have been a better day for us to be able to join you guys and talk about how important it is to please vote and please get involved. We have so many people that are at Texas, and they still continue to volunteer with us. There's calls, there's letter writing. Obviously, any donations that can be made are just critical for us to be able to continue to do this work. And so I just wanted to give you that heads up and let you know, I'm sorry, he's just running a teeny bit late, but he will be on in just a second.
All good. Thank you so much, Cynthia. We really appreciate your team and everything that you've done to organize this for us today and to get Beto to come and talk to us. We're so excited to hear from him.
Yeah, no, we're excited as well. And I know we participated with what you guys have done in the past, and you guys are just such a strong force. And it really, really is so important. Every single vote counts. I cannot tell you, especially in this coming election. And so we're doing our part. We're trying to, you know, go visit as many counties as we can and connect with as many communities as we can. We have all the votes. Mary, thank you for my, somebody had given me this, and I love this cap. So I'm wearing it today because it is very, very hot and humid in Houston right now, from those of you that have been to Houston. But we're really excited, and we have a great lineup, a lot of really strong leaders that are going to be speaking, you know, regarding how this has affected their communities. And I can't tell you, part of the benefit of going out and meeting with people, like last night we had an event in Pearland, had probably 500 people out. And this is really devastating to women, devastating to minority women who have less resources to healthcare and to reproductive healthcare. So, you know, when you hear those stories firsthand, it really, really impacts you. Transgender children, that come with their families, just heartbroken and, you know, just very afraid, really, really afraid. And so this feels good to be able to do something, you know, today and gather all these people and talk about it and try to figure out what we can do to make sure that, you know, Beto's elected and that we have somebody that is for everybody and really wants to do the right thing and make sure that all people feel that they have a place. Let me check. Well, let me see. I'm going to double check to see if you guys have such a large group. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's great. And we've got some people watching on Facebook as well. Welcome to our Facebook viewers out there and really all across the globe.
Well, that's fantastic. And I can only imagine. So right now in Houston, it's 9 a.m. And I was talking to Jennifer earlier and she was telling me that I think it's like, what time in Germany right now?
It's 4 now, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Beautiful sunny day, just perfect.
And we're going to add in the chat, but if y'all would like to volunteer with us, please go to betofortexas.com. And on our website, there's opportunities to sign up to volunteer. And we would just love and really appreciate any support you could give us. I'm sure many of you have family members that still live in the United States, that live in Texas, and it would be wonderful for you to share this with them and encourage them to please sign up and please be a part of what we're doing. We need every single person. We really do. And together, I know that's how we're going to be able to get this done.
And I know that Beto's website is also, oh, I just saw that he joined.
Oh, great.
And we'll get going. All right. I first heard Beto speak in my hometown of Abilene and his run for Senate in 2018. Beto, we're so excited you could be here today. We're so excited you're joining us. As many people know, rural Texas has long been discounted as a Republican stronghold. So to have the opportunity to hear a Democratic Senate candidate was truly exciting. It was, in fact, what inspired me to begin volunteering with Democrats Abroad. Beto's strong belief in a better future for the state of Texas is contagious. I could no longer sit idly by and let others do all of the heavy lifting. Since then, we've worked to establish Texans Abroad, helped thousands of Texas voters get their ballots back from overseas, lobbied for the rights of overseas voters at the Texas Capitol, and initiated this series of Meet the Candidate events. I will be voting for Beto this November because I want to look at my home state and be proud that it is taking care of its people. I want Texas children to have a quality education. I don't want to lose any more friends due to poor health care. And I don't ever want to read another headline about shootings or lose someone I love. And I want all Texans to have the many wonderful things that we enjoy here in Germany: parental leave, universal health care, reproductive rights, and more. So I hope that you will encourage everyone you know to vote this coming November so that we wake up to the promise of a better Texas and a better America on November 9th. Join me in welcoming the next governor of Texas, Beto O'Rourke.
Hey, Jennifer, that's so incredibly kind and sweet of you. And I love that this is also rooted in Abilene, Texas, one of my favorite places to visit and to be with people. And for those who, unlike Jennifer, are not familiar with Abilene, Texas, it is supposed to be one of the reddest places on the planet. And we kind of joke about the fact that you can see it glowing from outer space as you orbit the planet. But when you're actually in Abilene, some of the best, kindest people that I've ever met anywhere, and some of our biggest turnout that we see when we show up to hold these town hall meetings that we're holding all over the state of Texas. Yesterday it was in Bernie, Texas, Kimball County. We had, Cynthia's on here, maybe Cynthia, 450, 500 people come out on the middle of a Friday day, hot, steaming Texas day. But folks were still wanting to come out, and not so much for the candidate or his political party, but because, as Jennifer just alluded, the very future of this state is at stake. And given our role in this country's politics, I would argue the future of the United States of America is at stake in this election on November 8th. And people are all about it. They're not waiting idly by. They're not sitting on the sidelines. They are absolutely in this for all that they've got. And I love it. And I love being with them because though these are dark days, And for those of us my vintage, I'm 49 years old, I'll be 50 this year. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this in our lifetime in Texas or in this country. And it may have been a failure of imagination on our part to envision that we would have literally book bans in the state of Texas, or teachers being instructed by their governor on which version of United States and Texas history they're allowed to teach, which version they're not allowed to teach. Those same teachers, so badly underpaid in this state that they're leaving by the thousands, are now asked to turn in the parents of transgender kids on the accusation of child abuse. And as you all probably know, if that accusation is sustained after an investigation, not only is that child taken from their loving parents, and I've not met parents who love their kids any more than parents of transgender kids, trying to help them navigate one of the toughest things a kid can possibly go through, but every other child in that household is taken as well and placed into Child Protective Services, which is so badly run in the state of Texas. 30,000 kids in that system that routinely they are sleeping in the hallways, on the desks and under the tables at CPS offices. And last year alone, more than 100 kids died in CPS in the custody and care of the state of Texas. It was a failure of imagination on the part of many of us to ever envision that not only would abortion be restricted in the state of Texas, Governor Abbott signed a bill last year outlawing abortion as soon as this draft Supreme Court opinion becomes final. And when I say outlaw, let me just be really clear about what I'm talking about. From conception going forward, abortion will be illegal in the state of Texas with no exception for rape, with no exception for incest, bar none. But as you all know, it will not stop there. The governor this week talked about defunding public education under the guise of not paying for undocumented immigrant children to be educated in our classrooms. But really, this is an agenda to defund public schools in the state of Texas, one of the last true harbors of democracy in this state, where kids come together regardless of zip code or race or ethnicity or immigration status or any other difference between us, and come together and see one another not as each other's enemies, but as each other's friends, and fellow Americans and fellow Texans and fellow human beings. That was the value that I grew up with when I grew up here in the state of Texas. That's what I want for my three kiddos who are growing up there right now in El Paso, Texas, going to the same world-class public schools that I did. But listen, I mentioned that it's dark right now, but I also mentioned that I'm pretty energized and even electrified by what I'm seeing across the state of Texas, because people are going to be the answer to this. We, the people of Texas, are going to overcome this. And it's we, the people of Texas, who are in Texas. It's we, the people of Texas, who are outside of Texas, such as those who are on this call right now, who are going to be the answer to this moment and who are going to overcome these challenges at this defining moment of truth for Texas and for America. And one point I want to leave you with, and it's a point of encouragement, is that not only can we do this, we have done this before under much greater odds, under much tougher pressure. If you think about abortion rights in Texas, for example, no one from outside of Texas granted these rights to the women of this state. In fact, Jane Roe of Roe versus Wade was a Texan. Sarah Weddington and Linda Coffey, and Sarah Weddington also from Abilene, Texas, who successfully pled her case before the Supreme Court that rendered that Roe versus Wade decision in 1973. They were from the state of Texas. Women from Texas won the right for women from Texas to be able to make their own healthcare decisions, their own decisions about their own body and their own future. And it will be Texans and Texas women again, especially, who secure this right again through this election. Because if you care about any of these things that I just mentioned or anything else that's taking place in this state, the only answer is to win political power. And the only way we're going to do that is by winning this election for governor. A couple of things that I'll leave you with, and then I'll turn it back over to Jennifer to facilitate some questions. One, I mentioned that this is possible and it's been done against greater odds before, but I just want you to know the math on this, or some of the numbers at least. In 2018, when I ran against Ted Cruz and we got within 2.6% of beating him, we lost by 216,000 votes. Okay, so it's a pretty small margin. In that same election of more than 8 million votes cast, 500,000 Texans voted for me for US Senator, and those same 500,000 Texans voted for Greg Abbott for governor. So if you're wondering if there were any swing or persuadable or independent voters in the state of Texas, 500,000 voted for both of us in the last election. I only lost by 216,000 votes against Cruz. We only have to persuade a little less than half of those who voted both for Greg Abbott and BetoORourke last time. But we won't just stop there with the persuadable voters. We're also targeting those voters who themselves have been the targets of voter suppression and voter intimidation. Millions of our fellow Texans who were eligible to vote in the last election, 2020, did not cast a ballot. It's not because they're lazy. It's not for any lack of love of this democracy. It's because we are the most voter restricted state in the nation. Harder to cast a ballot or register to vote in Texas than in any other. But we now have 67,000 volunteers and counting who have signed up to grab a clipboard, knock on doors, meet these future voters where they are, and invite them into this democracy and make sure that their voice is heard and that their vote is counted. I'm telling you that we uniquely have the capacity to reach those non-voters today, bring them into the fold, and make sure that they turn out on November 8th, 2022, or in the early voting that precedes that. Second thing that I want to tell you is that dollar for dollar, day for day, we've been able to outraise Greg Abbott. This is a race where the contribution cap is unrestricted. He's literally taking $1 million checks from his big donors, the same people who he allowed to make billions of dollars off of our grid failure last winter. The people of Texas and the people of Texas who are outside of Texas right now have been more than a match for him on this as well. 5, 10, 15 bucks at a time. Every now and then somebody chipping in 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 bucks. That all adds up. And it means that we have the resources to support those organizers and volunteers who are on the doors of those voters right now. I want you to know that as well. And then lastly, the latest poll that came out from the Texas Lyceum has Greg Abbott at 42% of Texas voters, and it has me, Beto O'Rourke, at 40% of Texas voters. So we are within reach. And I think the margin of error for that poll was a little over 2%. So we were within the margin right now, 6 months to go. And as I mentioned earlier, not only am I energized and electrified, but so is the electorate in the state of Texas right now. Whether it's this issue of reproductive health care, whether it's the state of our public schools, whether it's the kind of jobs that we want to create in the state of Texas, or holding the person with the greatest responsibility for the failures in this state, Greg Abbott, for the energy grid failure, for our failure to meet inflation in the state of Texas, or for our failure to bring people together at this very fractured, polarized moment. Folks want something better. We're going to make sure that we prosecute the case successfully, bring in those new voters, and win this election. But I sure would love to have your help as a volunteer, and you can text or phone bank for us in this campaign, and also your help as a donor. You can make contributions, and those contributions will go a long way towards reaching those who will decide the outcome of this election. And then, of course, you're also a voter, and we need these votes because I think this is going to be decided in the thousands, if not the hundreds of votes. So every single one of us is going to count in this one. So Jennifer, thank you for bringing us together, and thanks to everybody who's on the call. Looking forward to answering your questions, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Beto, for sharing your inspirational words. And we are going to do all that we can to help Texas voters living abroad to make their voices heard. So I'll turn over to some fellow Texas voters to ask our questions. And we're going to first hear from Robin in Belgium.
Hello, Beto. It's a really pleasure to be here. I wanted to, having experienced it firsthand, I wanted to talk about voter suppression. Well, ask about voter suppression. It happened to me in the primaries just a couple months ago, where I was refused to vote when it had been accepted before. And so it's becoming increasingly hard to vote, especially in Texas, and since the last election, and even more so for those of us abroad. As governor, what would you do to help protect this right to vote for Texans in the state and for Texans abroad? And yeah, so thank you.
Robin, thanks for the question. It's good to see you again. I want to be really clear-eyed about what we're up against, because it's really unprecedented, at least since 1965, when our Texas president, Lyndon Baines Johnson, signed the Voting Rights Act into law. In the primaries that we just had in March, 13% of the ballots cast were rejected. I'm not saying that 13% of the voters were turned away or 13% of the voters didn't show up and didn't cast a ballot. 13% of the people who took the trouble to go down to a polling station or to request a mail-in ballot or to participate in the outcome of this election had their vote rejected. This is not by accident. This is by design. The election bill signed last year by Greg Abbott, mentioned this earlier, makes this the toughest state in the nation in which to vote. And that is proof right there. And if we need further validation of this, we learned that a 95-year-old Texan, World War II veteran, a guy who put his life on the line for this country, fighting fascism abroad, perhaps where many of you are right now, to defend democracy home right here in Texas, had his ballot rejected not once, but 3 times. The guy kept trying to vote. And if any of us have earned the right to vote in this country and in this state, is that guy who was literally willing to lose his life for that right. So that's what we're up against right now. And I wish that the Department of Justice would do their job, come to Texas, enforce the Voting Rights Act as they should, given the fact that unconstitutionally, our fellow Texans are being denied the right to vote. But we cannot hope and wait and hold our breath and figure that someone else is going to do the work for us. They won't. This one is going to be on us. And that's where these volunteers that I mentioned, 67,000 and counting, we want you, Robin, to be one of them as well if you're not already signed up. That's where this is so important, because we've got to be on the doors of these voters and explain the new rules of the road as they try to rig this contest in the middle of the race. And we either just sit back and submit and take it and say, well, shit, that was nice. 246 years we had a democracy. That was great. Or we get out there and we fight for it like that World War II veteran was willing to fight for it back in 1944. So that's what I've chosen to do. It sounds like that's what you all have chosen to do. And so we've got to first win this election and overcome the greatest attack on American democracy since 1965, bar none. And then to your question, Robin, once we win, we've got to restore the right to vote to every single eligible citizen in Texas, outside of Texas. And I don't care, no me importa, if they are Republicans or Democrats or independents, that does not matter. It just matters that you are able to freely and fairly cast that ballot and count on the fact that it will be counted and counted towards the candidate of your choice. We can make that easier by doing things like allowing for online voter registration that doesn't exist today. We can make Election Day a state holiday so people can get time off of work in order to cast that ballot. We could have automatic voter registration, which many other states have. Texas does not, which means when you turn 18 or when you become a naturalized citizen, you are automatically entered onto the rolls and are now free to vote in the next election. You can also do same-day voter registration so that if you move to Texas from Florida or Iowa or Spain for that matter, and you are transferring your address to the state of Texas, your voter registration can be updated on the very day that you vote. We don't have that in Texas either. So let's stop the bad things that prevent people from fairly casting their ballot, and let's do some good things that make it easier for people to fully participate in this democracy. That's what I would do if I were governor.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that answer. We're now going to turn over to Lindsay to ask a question about women's reproductive justice.
Hi, thank you again for being with us here today. So yes, as Jennifer mentioned, women's healthcare, I think it's something that's on all of our minds. So what is your plan of action to protect reproductive rights and access to abortion services in the face of SB 8 and the looming SCOTUS decision to overturn Roe versus Wade?
Thank you, Lindsay. For everyone's reference, I mentioned that Abbott has signed what's called a trigger bill that outlaws abortion from conception 30 days after a final Supreme Court ruling that pulls down Roe versus Wade, and no exception for rape or incest. But Lindsay talked about SB 8. That's already on the books right now and being enforced. And that is what is called a 6-week abortion ban or heartbeat bill. And essentially, after 6 weeks, abortion becomes illegal in the state of Texas, enforced by American citizens. So any American citizen anywhere in this country, and I guess anywhere around the world, has standing to pursue anybody who assists any woman in obtaining her constitutional right to an abortion. and can win a $10,000 bounty for doing so. I'm not making this shit up. This is real. This is on the books right now. Greg Abbott signed it. And when asked by a reporter, Governor, on this 6-week abortion ban, where people can collect a $10,000 bounty coming after the women of the state of Texas, there's no exception for rape. And the governor, looking like a deer caught in the headlights, says, well, we're going to eliminate rape in the state of Texas. Since he's been governor, rape, murder, and other violent crimes, the clearance rate has gone from 70% to 50%. So there are literally more, not less, rapists on the streets of Texas today. And we just saw a horrifying story of a 13-year-old girl who was raped by her grandfather, who had to travel across the state of Texas to deal with a trauma that we would not want to even begin to imagine for any of our kids. And yet she has to live it right now here in the state of Texas. So they're really good questions. What are we going to do about this? The first and most important thing that we've got to do is we've got to win. And we've got to get that to every single person who cares at all about this issue and cares at all about the women who fought for this right leading up to 1973 and Roe versus Wade. There's just no other way around it. There's no Supreme Court configuration going forward in the near future that's going to save us. There's no, I'm sorry to say this, and listen, I love my Democrats in Congress, but we've got a majority in the House. We have a majority in the Senate. We have a Democrat in the White House, and they have yet to enshrine the right to privacy and to an abortion for women in Texas and across this country into law. So they're not going to save our bacon either. This is on us right now. We've got to win this election. This is about power. And I know you all know this, but it bears repeating. Let me say this. If this were about life, then Greg Abbott would do something about all those kids who are dying in CPS custody. If this were about heartbeats, then he'd think about the heartbeats of these kids that we're losing in school shootings across the state of Texas, in church shootings across the state of Texas, in supermarket shootings and movie theater shootings across the state of Texas. This isn't about kids or heartbeats or life. This is about control, and this is about power over the women of Texas. Well, we have to be just as clear-eyed about the pursuit of power and political power, and that means winning this election so we can turn political power back to the people of Texas and make sure that these rights are protected going forward. As governor, I'm going to make sure that we are crystal clear on advocating for every woman to make her own decision about her own body, her own health care, and her own future. And I'm going to work with anyone, anytime, anywhere. And that means Republican legislatures, because there's a good chance I'll be working with a lot of Republican legislators when we win this, to find the common ground, to make sure that they understand the true consequence of this kind of legislation. Not only is it harder in Texas to get an abortion, but when you close down all the reproductive health care clinics, it's almost impossible for some women to get a cervical cancer screening, hard to get any kind of family planning help at all, or in the least insured state in America to see a doctor. And so we are now at the epicenter of a maternal mortality crisis. It's among the worst in the developed world. Right here in the state of Texas, we're losing women, especially Black women, faster than almost any other place in the developed world right now. So I know that there are Republican legislators who, when they understand this, and when they're reminded of this by their constituents in their own communities, are going to help us to do the right thing and to find enough common ground to make this better for more women in the state of Texas. Last thing I'll tell you on this, University of Texas released a poll earlier this week, and they found, check this out, they found that only 20% of our fellow Texans agree with the governor's position on this, a total ban on abortion. The vast majority of us, Republicans, Democrats, rural communities, big cities alike, agree that a woman should have the right to choose. So when we win, we're going to make sure that those values are reflected in our policies, how we legislate, and how I am able to govern. Thank you, Lindsay, for the question.
Thank you so much, Beto. We hope to get in a couple more questions before you have to hop off. We've got one now from Dana Frayling in Finland about climate.
Such an honor to have you here today. Yes, I am a Texas voter from Dallas, and I reside in Finland. I'm also the chair of the Democrats Abroad Environment and Climate Crisis Council. So my question today to you is concerning that Texas is the highest producer of wind energy in the country. as well as the top crude oil and natural gas producing state in the nation, accounting for 43% of the nation's crude oil production and 26% of its marketed natural gas production. How can you reframe and support the state's energy industry going forward that will both facilitate the state's transition to renewable energy while also bolstering the currently weak power grid infrastructure? As we all know, it failed terribly during the big freeze 2 years ago. Thanks so much for everything you're doing and for addressing this very important question as we face a climate emergency all over the world.
Thank you, Dana. I'm so proud of Texas and the fact that we are the energy capital of the world right now. And those in the energy industry here, by and large, oil and gas, have, through their innovation and their ingenuity and their incredibly hard work, secured, by and large, the energy independence of this country. Old enough to remember the wars in the Middle East to secure our supply lines, the deals with dictators and autocrats and thugs around the world, really for our ability to import oil and gas. The compromises we've made, in some cases compromising our values and our convictions, to make sure that we have the energy that literally drives this country. And Texas, more than any other state, has been the answer to that. I'm grateful for that. But as you mentioned, we're also the leader now in the production of wind energy in the United States of America. We're number 2 in solar. I won't stop until we're number 1. In fact, just outside of my hometown of El Paso is one of the best places in the planet to array utility scale solar. Geothermal, as you probably know, Dana, the skill set from oil and gas drilling to geothermal drilling is almost 1-to-1. It's beautiful. And so no state is better prepared to lead the geothermal revolution than is Texas. And then when it comes to hydrogen and the market cap, the future, the horizon on hydrogen as a necessary energy source and fuel going forward, and the ability to do it in a way that truly is renewable or lessens the impact on the climate is incredibly exciting. And some of the innovation there is taking place here in Texas. In other words, no state is better prepared for this energy expansion and the kinds of jobs by the millions that we will be able to create here. And so you asked me how I frame it. I always begin by talking about jobs in the state of Texas and the jobs that we are already creating in wind and solar, that we will in geothermal and hydrogen. The fact that as many of those as possible need to be union jobs, high paying, high wage, high value jobs for the state of Texas, and the ability for us to continue to have pride of place, because some country and some place within some country is going to lead this energy revolution to confront climate change before it's too late. I want that to be America. And within the United States, it has to be Texas. We have a governor right now who's firmly focused on the past and where we used to be. I want us to be firmly focused on the future and what we are going to win. So I know that we can do this. It speaks to our ambitions as Texans. It speaks to our aspirations as Americans. And you're right, there is no graver threat to humanity, to our kids and grandkids and the generations that follow than climate. But there's no state that is better prepared to meet that than this one right here. And I think if we focus this on jobs, if we speak to our pride, if we talk about expansion and we make sure that people don't feel threatened, because they don't need to feel threatened about losing their job tomorrow. They need to feel like they are part of the future of this conversation, that they have a seat at the table, and that the skills and experience and expertise that they have will be brought to bear on Texas's ability to win this race. So Dana, thank you for asking this, and thank you for your belief and faith in what Texas can do.
Beto, thank you so much for all of your questions. We know that we're coming up on our time. I don't know if you want to take one more or if you need to.
Yeah, let's take another. Let's take another for sure.
Well, this is a really important one because it's from our Democrats Abroad in Mexico membership coordinator, Mike Sump, and there's so much potential for voter outreach in Mexico. And Mike would like to ask you a question about that. And thank you again for joining us today.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Beto, for coming. This is one of the greatest events Democrats abroad have ever had, and you just made us so excited and so proud. I vote in Polk County, and I spent 25 years working for that great Texas company, Texas Instruments. But now my focus is in Mexico and in all the US citizens that need help to get registered. Census data tells us there's over 800,000 US citizens. It's probably 2 or 3 times that much living in Mexico. We estimate around 500,000 just south of the border with Texas. So there's a huge potential for Texas voters. My question is, what's your strategy to mobilize that vote on both sides of the border, and how can we help you?
Mike, my strategy begins by getting your phone number and calling you and enlisting your help. The numbers that you just shared are staggering. And again, to put it in perspective, in 2018, we lost by 216,000 votes. I don't know how many of the 800 to 1 million to maybe more expat Americans there are in Mexico who are Texas voters or could be registered to vote in the state of Texas, but put that against the 216,000 delta that we had in 2018, and you start cooking with gas. So Mike, I'd love to have your help here. I think that a lot of the issues that we're talking about, I hope are going to resonate with Americans, with Texans who live in Mexico. Mike will know this, but not everyone on the call will. So let me share this. A few weeks ago, Greg Abbott, our current governor, shut down nearly all trade between the United States and Mexico under the guise of stopping illegal drugs or immigration, or I don't know exactly what his point was. But no undocumented immigrants were found. No human smugglers were apprehended. Not a single ounce of fentanyl was stopped, but it did blockade US-Mexico trade. Mexico is the largest trading partner for the state of Texas. It supports 600,000 jobs within the state. And the cost of the Texas economy to our GDP was $4.2 billion for this political stunt. For the United States of America, it was over $9 billion. The price of our groceries went through the roof because 2/3 of the fresh produce that we consume in the state of Texas comes from Mexico, and it deeply damaged bilateral relations between the two countries. And Mike, I've got to imagine for you and others who are living in Mexico, it's deeply embarrassing, and it's absolutely inconsistent with the way that Texas and Mexico have worked together in the past. Some of you probably know this, but Mexican citizens are granted in-state tuition for Texas public universities. And we don't do that necessarily out of charity or the kindness of our heart. We do it for our own self-interest. We know that if you're born in Ciudad Juarez or Matamoros and you come to the University of Texas at El Paso and you graduate with an engineering degree and you choose to stay in El Paso, we become the beneficiaries of your intellectual capital, the business that you're going to start, the jobs that you're going to create, the great things that you're going to make happen, you're going to make happen for us, for the people of Texas. So it's a very small investment for us to make to receive a windfall of a return. But our governor now is turning his back on this collaboration, this cooperation, this mutual benefit that we've enjoyed between the states of Texas and Chihuahua, for example, when it comes to Ciudad Juarez and El Paso. And it really only hurts us. I mean, it hurts Mexico as well, but it really hurts us here in Texas. It hurts us economically. It hurts us in terms of our sense of pride. And it hurts these families who are having a harder time staying connected and together. So Mike, I would love to be able to tap into what I'm sure is a wellspring of anger and frustration on the part of Americans living in Mexico right now, and remind them that they have the opportunity by participating in this next election to do something about it. And given the fact that I live in El Paso and I'm so frequently in cities like Laredo and Eagle Pass and Del Rio and McAllen and Brownsville, in other words, the cities on the US side of the US-Mexico border, I think it would be very easy to meet with some of your peers and others who are interested in making sure that we turn out the vote of Texans in Mexico. So I'm going to ask Jennifer to pass along your contact information so we can follow up on that and hopefully work together, connect with these folks, and make sure that they turn out to vote in this election.
Thank you so much. And I can tell you that we're all working for you every day.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
Depends on people just like you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank
Muy
you.
amable.
Well, thank you so much, Beto, for joining us. Also from my side here, phenomenal and so inspirational. So thank you for all the work that is happening on the ground. I'm sure you get the question all the time too, right? How's it looking for November? Can Democrats pull this off? It's a midterm. And, you know, I think the thing that we all need to remember is it is in our hands, and you are leaving us so motivated to get out the vote for you and great candidates all around the country. So thank you so much for joining. I'd also like to throw a few shout outs to Jennifer, again, as our Texas Abroad lead. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And also to Robin and Lindsay, who were very instrumental in making this event happen. Thank you so much to all of you. And one last ask, get your ballot at votefromabroad.org today so that we can get Beto in the governor's office. With that, back to you, Jennifer, and thank you again, Beto. Best of luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us today. How exciting. And good luck at your rally today too. We are so grateful that Beto could join us today, and we know that our votes from overseas can be the margin of victory in races up and down the ballot this November, especially for governor. And we promise to do everything that we can to turn out the overseas vote so that Beto can bring about these essential life-saving changes in Texas. As Candace said, thank you to Robin and Lindsay for helping to make today's event possible. And thank you so much to Beto's team for all of their support. Thank you to our volunteers and our panelists, both on and off camera. And thank you to Candace Karastan, our international chair, for her support of the DA state teams. And especially thank you to all of our participants here on Zoom and on Facebook for tuning in from across the globe. Remember that Texans living abroad must request their ballots each and every calendar year. And like Candace said, if you haven't already done so, please head to Vote From Abroad today. Remember, on your federal postcard application, if you select that you intend to return, you will be sent a full ballot, including for the governor's race. Remember, our ballots must be returned by postal mail, so you want to get yours back well in advance of the election. Please refer to our Texas voting guides to make sure that your vote is counted. We know this can be a complex process, and we are here to help. If you have any questions, reach out to us at tx@democratsabroad.org. And you're also invited to join us this coming Saturday for our next planning meeting. We hope that this event has inspired you to help get out the overseas vote. Our DA volunteer survey can be found in the chat if you're interested in getting involved. And please remember, a donation of $20.22 can help turn Texas blue. With our combined time, talents, and treasures, we can mobilize a record number of overseas votes and send Beto to the Texas